The Irrational Confidence Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and week number 3 is in the book. We are cruising our way through this season. We are almost to where everyone will be playing conference games in the near future. Man, week number 3 was a wild one. I'm joined by my co-host, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Week 3 was a slate.
It was a slate.
I mean, even you start off with the chaos of the NC State Wake Forest game on Thursday night and run through some of the games on Friday that happened and how Colorado got boat raced by Houston. And then noon all the way through until the wee hours of the morning on Saturday. It was just a great game, entertaining, chaos, storylines everywhere. And it makes for it's the reason why college football is king.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, folks, before we get cruising along on this episode, though, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Just get notified every single time we drop a new episode. We're talking college football all season long. Fresh, we got some big news maybe towards the end of this. We'll talk about the 2 coaching changes here. If you have not heard, there were 2 major coaching changes this morning on Sunday as we're recording this. We're recording this Sunday evening here. But let's go into the games here, Fresh. There's a variety of places we could start. We could start in Knoxville. We could start in South Bend. We could start in Columbia, South Carolina even. We could start in Atlanta. I honestly think maybe the best place for us to start, though, is Coral Gables. We've been talking about this for 4 weeks. We've been giving Miami, kind of waiting on Miami being back. Was this the official moment of Miami being quote unquote back?
I want to see them beat Florida first, back-to-back years. Even though Florida's coming up, we'll talk about them in a second. But beating Florida, beating Clemson, give me a big win. The USF game, their offense doesn't have the firepower to be able to match. And they were not creeping up on anybody else. They will be actually taken seriously after beating Florida the week before. Actually, that scenario and that sequence provided them a disadvantage. They have a good football team at USF, but hearing all the hype of, they just beat Florida, blah, blah, blah. Here's the 2 ranked opponents, and they jumped up way high, which rightfully so. They were 2-0, and they beat Boise State and Florida. Miami's like, all right, it's time to put it on. And they looked very efficient. The offense played well, but I was more impressed with the way the defense was absolutely dominating. Because we've seen Miami teams who could score, but the defense never shows up. They shut down Brown. They shut down the entire offense and outscored, which is, movement of the football. And I think that was the most impressive part. Now, this week, they have Florida coming to town. It's going to be maybe a 70-30. I think there's still going to be a lot of Florida fans that'll be down there just because it's the state university, the flagship university.
Will they make the travel?
But I think they're still going to make the travel. Number one, they're supporting their fans. There's hardcore fans, especially in South Florida. It's too far to get to games. Well, this is the one chance for them to be there. You got to figure the geographic area. If I can actually see the Gators play, I live in South Florida. Instead of driving all the way to Gainesville at I-75, they're going to be there.
Fair enough.
But this is the last ditch effort for Billy Napier. I think if Miami can come out there and just put it on, it's a wounded animal, take care of business. You already have momentum, but beating Florida would really supplant them. It's like, all right, they are back. The Florida State game is going to be huge, but to be back and be considered like 4-0, we've beaten Notre Dame, we've beaten Florida. Like those are name wins. Those are logo games for the Hurricanes that they haven't had really consistently in the past. So, they have they took advantage of the momentum. They played it off. They dominated. They didn't just beat USF. They beat them without a doubt. They showed a ferocious ability to just put your foot down and go after it. And if they can keep that mentality going forward, they're going to be great. Because last year we saw there were teams that they should have blown away and they didn't. And there were teams that they should have lost to and somehow they survived. Having a mentality, just drive home and get the dub and do it convincingly is something I think that's what Miami's all about. If they can get that going, they're going to be in great shape.
This is the most impressed I've been with a Miami team in at least 4 or 5 years, and probably even further back than that. I can't think of the last time I felt like Miami was a national powerhouse. After watching how they just completely dismantled, and then I went back and I thought about Miami and jumping on Notre Dame early on. They did kind of take their foot off the gas, let Notre Dame kind of claw back into it. But again, it showed me that they learned the lesson from that game and took it over into this game. The Hurricanes wound up jumping out to a big lead, and then they never let USF back in. I kind of was bouncing back and forth between this game and our games. And I kept thinking, I was like, okay, when am I going to see USF put a touchdown in? And again, they would be within 10 points or maybe 14 points. But you look at it, they're up 28-6 at halftime. And I was waiting for USF to make it at least like 28-13, maybe 28-17, like in that realm where you're within like 2 scores. And Miami just never let it happen. And I kept thinking to myself going, this could be that moment where we say, hey, Miami is really turning the corner. Carson Beck looked good.
Yeah, they had a ranked opponent. It was on a major wave, and they took care of business and didn't give them any sense of hope. One thing that Florida did is that Florida didn't hit the big shots when they had them. They dropped some deep balls. They couldn't convince to score touchdowns in the red zone. They let USF hang around. Miami did not. Miami put them away early, and they settled it. And that's exactly why, you look at a ferocious team, a mentality that's been changed is we are going to finish it. Even back to the opener when they played Notre Dame, they were up to a huge lead, and Notre Dame came storming back in the fourth quarter, and they dug deep and found a way to put together a drive to finish the game off and win it. Prior Miami teams might have just collapsed, like, oh, here we go again. They just died. So that mentality change you can sort of see is different so far.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump over to Baton Rouge then, Fresh, because we are talking about Miami's next week 4 opponent, the Florida Gators there. I mean, I'll say Florida played tough for a half. Mm-hmm. The first half was competitive, and I think that's kind of what we expected. We expected the Gators to come fired up. But again, it was just another giant, major disappointment by the Florida Gators and Billy Napier. And I think that we're starting to see the Gators probably are on their way to like maybe a 4 or 5 win season here. Like, this is a football team that has talent, but they're not as good as the sum of the parts of that talent. Like, the product at the end of it, when you combine all that talent together, doesn't match. It's like a really crappy pot of gumbo or chili where you throw a bunch of stuff in it and you think it's all going to work, and you're like, well, that's just disgusting right there.
I mean, 5 interceptions from Lagway, and a couple of those were just terrible reads. Maybe he's trying to do too much. Receivers not helping him out. There's definitely a disconnect. And you hear Napier come out in post games like, well, we have the players. Well, if you have the players, then that means you, as the head coach, are the obvious problem. You're the play caller. No one respects you. There's no leadership from your position. No one's stepping up. There's no team leadership that actually wants to step up and take over a game. They're always looking at each other else. Like, who's going to step up? None of them are actually the ones to actually do it. You saw it versus USF the week before when they were in the red zone, struggling, can't score a touchdown. Who's going to step up and get it done? Who's going to make the big play? Everyone's kind of hoping and praying someone's going to do it. No one's actually doing it. The defense holding LSU to 20 points. I'll give them that. They were locked in. Like, they played well. I also expect, I have a question about LSU only scoring 20 points.
I do too.
You have all that talent receiver. You have the entire depth. The defense played their hearts out. They're flying around, but that offense, 20 points. He didn't score very many versus Clemson, but hey, Georgia Tech did. Has been worrying the Nussmeier effect of, all right, has he trusted a receiver yet? Are they in a flow? It's not like he's a first-time starter. There are some questions there that have to be answered for LSU. They won. They survived. They're going to get better. It's okay to have these problems when you win. But at some point, we're going to need Nussmeier to put up a 40 burger and really just let it loose and let it fly. If you have a wounded duck, or in this case, a wounded gator, you should have gone for the jugular and poured on points and really made a statement, especially in a rivalry. You want to make sure it's done. They just left me like, there's just something. You won the game, great, but I wanted more. I will give credit on that to Florida's defense. At least played tough. They didn't give up. But that Florida offense, at some point later on down the road, floodgates are going to open because that offense is going to stink, and the defense is going to be like, screw it. I can't keep doing this. Early in the year, you're still there, you're still fighting, but who knows if the rest of the year goes, they might just be like, I surrender and I'm done. And that's a problem. I'm surprised that Billy Napier's still the head coach. Maybe they want to wait till the bye week in a couple weeks, see if they can bounce back versus Miami. But you thought they were going to bounce back versus LSU, and they didn't. So this week, upcoming, we'll talk about it during preview, but this is very important, how that team comes out in that first quarter.
All right, Fresh. Well, let's go over to Knoxville, Tennessee then. just a short drive away from Baton Rouge, probably about 8 hours, maybe a short day drive
That's
there.
a day trip.
Georgia hangs on and winds up coming back from 21-7 down to beat Tennessee in overtime. Again, great back and forth game, highly entertaining. I got to give them that. Is an enjoyable game to watch, but now it also proves here Heupel's not going to beat Georgia. Like, it's not going to happen, I don't think, anytime soon. I don't think these guys are scheduled to play each other in the next couple of years. And I think he's got a Georgia problem.
Well, it's early still play is 2028. They played the hearts out. They came out 6 straight years. Tennessee scored first in the rivalry. It's that second half. They just don't. There's just something. And you saw the way Aguilar started off 14-14, and then he really had 2 interceptions, couldn't make some big time throws, couldn't get the key third downs. And that's a big testament to the Georgia defense because early on that secondary was getting smoked, and they'll tell you it.
Right.
There was a curve. The front 7 sort of settled in. The defense started getting stops. It shows that you have to play a full 60 minutes. The flash in the first quarter wasn't there for the full 4. And their defense, they made some plays early. They got some stops, but then Branch, the running game, Humphreys, Delp, Gunner making throws. It was the collective effort of just being where your feet are at. Execute one play at a time. Shrug it off. You learn from it. It's not the first time those guys have been through those battles. I think that experience of the past has paid off. It's the entire roster. Look, the Alabama game last year, they were getting the doors beat off them. They stormed all the way back, had a lead with 2.5 to go. And if it's not for Ryan Williams' ballet down the sideline and kicking people away, Georgia probably wins that football game. And even then, they drove back down the field and threw a pick in the end zone. So it's not like they completely was over. It's like they had gone through those moments, had gone to Texas and had that moment. So a bunch of that roster already experienced it, had that mentality of one play at a time, one growth. All the hatred on Mike Bobo. He put up 44. They put up over 500 yards total offense. They were slinging it over the best Tennessee defense in 20 years. Granted, they had their 2 top corners were out. There's some injuries, but everyone has injuries. Everyone has to got to deal with it. And things happen. I will give a tip of the cap to Josh Heupel and that entire coaching staff. They have recruited and they have gotten guys to play above their spot. And they are going to be a good football team. But in the big games, this is now 2 straight, they have laid eggs. They got smoked up at Ohio State in the playoff, and they had a chance to pull off the win here, and they laid an egg. So it's a mental part of the game for Tennessee in big games. Can they show up consistently? And that's a big problem right now for Josh Heupel. They have players that can get it done. They're recruiting at a high level, but can they show up when it matters in the fourth quarter with the game on the line?
First, I'll say this. Third quarter, coming right out of halftime, Georgia gets the ball to open the game. And as I'm watching this game, I was going back to our preview episode, and you were talking about the offensive line coming together there as well. And I thought the first half, the offensive line was wildly inconsistent. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, that third quarter drive, it was the moment where you saw like all 5 bodies moving forward. There wasn't a moment where it was kind of like the guy's borderline holding the guy, trying to like move it. He's moving his arm around him. It's one of those 50-50 I could call holding it in that spot. Those plays happen all the time. But this Georgia offensive line all of a sudden looked like a Georgia offensive line of old, especially on that drive. And I thought, and I tweeted out that, oh my gosh, this is finally, the offensive line has looked like they got their stuff together. They started hitting people in the mouth. You saw Bowens have a couple of good runs. Nate Frazier had a couple of really, really strong runs in that drive. I was really impressed with him. McCray had from the Illinois transfer that you guys got, who was the leading rusher for the Illini last year. He had some really strong runs behind this offensive line. And then I believe the minute I tweeted that out, the very next play or the very next drive was the 3 and out they went on, and the defense was back into the backfield after that. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself as I'm watching this going, I think there may be the whole thing with Bobo is if he could get that first offensive line play consistently. And again, you don't have to, I get it. You play 75 snaps a game. It's what the LSU offensive lineman said. 1 out of 7, if he gives up 1 sack out of 75 snaps a game, every single game. He's terrible. Like, you're awful if I've given up 12 sacks. And you think about like the sheer quantity, sheer amount of time you have to be next to perfect on the offensive line. And this Georgia offensive line for a drive, and then later on, and there were other times where they did it too, but that drive at the start of the third quarter epitomized like the perfection of what should be a Georgia offensive line. I thought that was an amazing job out of them, that they were able to move the ball with such force down the field, really to open up. And I think that's the moment where Tennessee had like, you go into halftime, you're up. Yes, second quarter wasn't great for Tennessee, but we're going to recollect. We're going to make adjustments. And then all of a sudden, the very first play, it's so demoralizing to a team. Georgia takes the lead. You don't do it by throwing the ball. You do it by running the ball down the field, smash it down your throat. I think that's the moment where the seeds of doubt start to sprout and really turn the tide in this game.
Yeah, Glover and Hughley putting at right guard and right tackle made a huge difference. They showed some consistency, some ferocity that stabilized. But I think any offense, and that's where you brought Bobo, everyone yells about play calling. If the offensive line isn't in sync, and I don't care who you are, if you can't run block, you can't pass protect. It doesn't matter what players on the outside you truly have. Your offense is going to be altered. You're going to have to cover and correct one way or another to compensate for that deficiency. So until the offensive line, is solved and stabilized, you are going to have a lot more bubble screens, quick passes, use your tight ends more, keep tight ends to help block and protect. It changes the play calling. And it also, you talk about seeds of doubt. It puts seeds of doubt in a quarterback's mind or a running back. Like, I'm running into a wall of nothing, or I have 2 seconds to throw. I got to get rid of the ball. So I think it's a correlation across the board where if you look at quarterback play, in the NFL is one thing, and even then you're going to find some of the other guys where they struggle because the offensive line's terrible. But the O-line is the line of scrimmage. The football is a line of scrimmage game. If you can't control it one way or the other, you are going to fail in one regard. So Bobo, you saw what they could do when they're actually in sync. But if the offensive line's out, that team can be in some serious trouble. So getting it stabilized was huge. And will it last 2 weeks? Will it last the rest of the year? Got Alabama in 2 weeks from now. Find out if it was a one-game fix or if it's actually a sign of things to come. But, anytime you can win, you never apologize for it. You go up there, you beat a rival in a hostile environment, and you move on. You check it off. It's a learning opportunity. It's a W. You'd rather learn it with a win than, suffer from a loss.
Yeah. All right, first, let's go to another place that dominated the line of scrimmage and also is located in the state of Georgia. The Yellow Jackets, I kind of want to say completely dismantled the Clemson Tigers. I mean, I know it was won on a last-second field goal, but there was never a point as I'm watching, and again, I popped in and out of this game there, but there's never a time where I jumped in and was watching Georgia Tech Clemson where I was like, this is the time Clemson turns on shows like they're better than Georgia Tech. It was always like, oh, no, Georgia Tech just smacked them again in the mouth and played it. I'm impressed by Yellow Jackets. Great job out of them. And that ACC title game pick is looking real good now for me.
That Georgia Tech defense
they're so good.
Fast. They were physical. That Clemson offensive line didn't have a chance. And Cade Klubnik looked like a freshman. That was the most shocking thing of all. His freshman year got some spot starts, especially in the Orange Bowl versus Tennessee, and looked terrible, and they got destroyed. Kind of had a decent 2 years between there. Obviously, a lot of resurgence late last year. As we've come into this season, I have not seen that Cade Klubnik. I've seen maybe a high school junior version, not even a freshman. It's been that rough and painful to watch. Bad decision making, not trusting the receivers, holding the ball too long, trying to do too much. Maybe it is because they don't have a running game. Even coming into the year, we're like, all right, who's going to be this running game? Where are they going to get it? They bring a receiver in and make him a running back, and they kind of had some success versus Troy, but there's still not a dominant effort in the ground game. Williams not playing. Wesco's the only guy. He was okay, but no one else stepping up. Offensively, they don't look like the Clemson teams of Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson here. There's just a lack of motion, a lack of fluid operation. It looks clunky. And that's on Dabo. Like you have brought this guy in, you've recruited these players, you need to step up and coach them up. And there's a swagger issue maybe. They don't feel confident. I don't know, but there's just something wrong with that team. And the defense, they weren't flying around forcing as many turnovers and getting the sacks or getting the stops that they need. They held on, but they were just something lacking for having all those top guys on the defensive line. Helt, PJ Parker, those guys, they played well in the front seven, but the pop in the secondary wasn't there. And that gave up a couple opportunities, especially on big third downs that Georgia Tech took advantage of. I think that was actually the official signaling of the switching of the guard. Clemson, now you're 1-2. You've lost to LSU at home. You survived Troy, and you lost a game at Georgia Tech. We said in the preview, in our top 25 preview, we were going to know who Clemson was by the end of September. We know that they're not a national championship contender. I'm not going to say they can't make the playoff because crazy things happen. They are not a national championship contender, and the blood's in the water right now at Clemson for them to maybe start downfall.
Yeah, I really think that this may be, I don't want to ever say the death of a program, but where Clemson just completely entrenches themselves into a tier below program where they'll occasionally make the playoff, but out of maybe a 5-year period, they might make the playoff 2 out of 5 years or 1 out of 5 years. They're not going to be a consistent playoff team. While you kind of thought with them being in the ACC with Florida State, what they did, Florida State's looked really good to start the year. Miami, we all had questions about. But again, now Georgia Tech coming in here. I also think, and again, Fresh, we're only at the first lap of a 4-lap season here. We're right at the end of the first lap. ACC may get 3 teams into the playoffs. We debated whether this could be a 2-team in the playoff. There is a path where I could see the ACC getting 3 teams into the playoffs.
There is. Georgia Tech.
But it has to happen still.
Georgia Tech looks very good. Miami looks very good. Florida State, they look a completely different team from last year. And Clemson I think they're still going to hang around, but I need to see more from them. Those are the 4 teams right there. Virginia, okay. Virginia Tech, obviously no. Pitt, they kind of let it down. Louisville, I think they're going to Louisville's a team you always have to be careful for. Boston College, scrappy. Cal and Stanford, please just go away.
Well, Cal's 3-0, man, already, and that quarterback's played lights out.
We'll see how he does. I'm not putting him in a spot as a playoff contender in the ACC. It's cute, it's success, but let's see when they start actually playing some real games.
Yeah, and he is kin to one of our biggest listeners too, so you gotta be careful about talking about someone's family. He's Carolina's family.
If he struggles or he's great, that's the thing. But 3-0, congratulations. We'll see what happens the rest of the year. Yeah. SMU, I think there's still something in the bag there, but that loss to Baylor was a tough one.
Yeah. All right, first, let's go. I guess we got to run up to South Bend, Indiana. Great job. You know what? With Marcel Reed completing 46% of his passes, 47% of his passes, they go up to Aggieland and win that game. He did throw for, he had only 17 for 37 for 360 yards. The dude is going to complete it. He's throwing it down the field. I mean, good job out of him. Again, Notre Dame starts 0-2 on the year. Kind of shocking, but also played 2 teams. Miami right now is number 5. I mean, it's the AP vote, and we all know after this past week, the AP vote means Bubkus. Texas A&M is a really solid football team. We are interested to see how they would do for this year. Again, they're 0-2. Both those losses are what people would quantify as a good loss. I don't think there's anything really such as a good loss, but people will say that. I just think Notre Dame's losing that magic part of them that they had last year, because these are 50-50 games, and sometimes the coin goes the other way on you.
Well, I remember in our playoff preview, I said Notre Dame wasn't making the playoff. You kind of gave me a look, but this was kind of what I was worried about is, are they gelled and ready to go early? Because they had 2 big-time games right out the gate.
Right.
And the thing is, they lost by combined, 4 points? It's not like they're getting blown out, but who's that last leader to get them over that threshold? They stormed back late versus Miami, just couldn't find a way to finish it. And they kept just going back and forth. The defense couldn't get that last stop on the last drive, allowing A&M to get that field goal. So there's tons of talent. They compete at a high level, but the breaks they got last year, they aren't getting so far this year. And at some point, They need someone else to rise up and just drive the team home. The season's not over, but it's 2 losses right after about 0-2. You can rebound, but somebody in that locker room's got to step up, take over, and take charge, and really look at the rest of the guys in the eye, push them to be better versions of themselves. Now on the A&M side, can we just give a congratulations for A&M finally winning a big game?
Yep.
I mean, it feels like it's been 30 years since A&M actually won a big football game. And we always, A&M, they're ranked, A&M, they're ranked. And what happens? They clunk it up or they fall just short. They finally won a big game. It wasn't like Elko style. It wasn't like 13-10. It was in the 40s. But is that a sign that maybe they have found the monkey off the back? All right, we can take a deep breath. We finally have a win. It's not a conference win, but it's a win versus a ranked opponent on the road, hostile environment. Maybe we can actually play a little more free now. Maybe we have the right kind of players that we learned from the past 2 years. We're 3 years removed from Jimbo Fisher and that disaster of the number one recruiting class of all time and completely just bottoming out. Maybe they have that change right there. The Elko impact has just gotten the guys to be more mentally confident to find a way to finish it. But we'll see. It's a sign of things to come for A&M, but big win for them. Really impressed with, I know Marcel Reed had a less than 50% completion percentage, but he made the big throws when it mattered to get to victory.
Yeah, and I think that, again, summed up perfectly. Your 2 losses are by 4 points to 2 teams that are at least, I would say if the College Football Playoff Committee would rank the teams right now, I think both these teams would be top 20 teams easily, and probably both teams top 15 teams, maybe top 12. But you look at Notre Dame's rest of their schedule. The only marquee win right now that's left on their schedule, and it's a possibility, would be USC, who's rated 25. They're 3-0 on the year right now. Everything else on this, I mean, you got Arkansas, who played Ole Miss kind of tough, but, NC State's 3-0, but we'll see on that one. BC lost to Cal. Navy is a service academy, great, but it's not Navy of last year. So it's going to be very difficult, I think, now. Notre Dame's got to run the table. They got to go 10-0 the remainder of the year for them to even be considered for a playoff spot.
Yeah, they have to really find that luck of the Irish, pun intended, very, very quickly.
Yeah. All right, Fresh, before we hang it up for the day, announced this morning Brett Pry out of Virginia Tech is gone. He's not there anymore. And Deshaun Foster out of UCLA, who lost, both these teams lost to teams that they had no business losing to. Both go to 0-3 on the year. I mean, it's going to take a while to fix both of these programs.
Well, first,
which one you want to do first?
UCLA, I think, is unfixable. And here's why. The fans don't care.
Interesting.
Nobody gives a dang. They have a $200 million athletic budget deficit. That means there's no money. It's a very lethargic
basketball school.
Well, and do they even really pack the house for basketball? It feels like a lethargic, an empathetic fan base and student body altogether. The move to the Big Ten was to pair with USC, but they have no business moving to the Big Ten. And having their legal situation even with Cal and paying them money, then the deficit in the athletic budget, playing in the Rose Bowl where if your fans aren't coming and you're not good, nobody cares. It's an empty, It's a hollow environment. There's a reason why they canceled their game with Georgia. That would have been the opener this year. That would have been 80,000 Georgia, 60,000 Georgia fans would have traveled to California during Labor Day weekend and there would have been a home game. But they lost on the ticket sales by canceling the game and had to pay money back because they were bailing. The athletic department as a whole, I think, has some serious issues. And it just cascades down to the football team. And if you're trying to recruit, especially now in NIL days, who's the big booster from UCLA outside the state that is going to help try to fund and bring kids to the program? They're going to go to Oregon. They're going to go to USC. They're going to go anywhere else outside the state. They're not going to UCLA. It really makes you like, what was successful there? Even when Chip Kelly, before he left to become the offensive coordinator, he was making chicken salad from chicken you know what. And you're playing in the Big Ten, which now the level of competition is much, much higher, even though when the Pac-12 was. The Pac-12 was just chaos, and that last year was no defense and tons of offense. They made their bed. They're there, and they have to find somebody who, at a grassroots level, is going to help rebuild this thing by developing players. And in this day and age with transfer portal and with kids leaving, it's very difficult to do because as soon as you get a freshman who's an unknown and you get him playing well, he's going to ask for a paycheck and he's going to leave.
Right.
I understand why they took John Foster. He's an offensive coach. He had mind. He obviously played at UCLA, but you need someone who's going to challenge fortitude of every person in that locker room to be disciplined, to be better, to play for each other, and to play. We talk about playing to a standard, playing to something. Because right now, there's not even a standard. There's nothing even an echo of a standard at UCLA outside of losing. It's a once proud program that has fallen, and it's only going to get worse because the Big Ten, the money's flowing everywhere else, and they're just going to keep passing them. That's my thought on UCLA, but I think they are a broken athletic department, not just a broken football program.
I think this word soul searching has a lot to go with UCLA. What do you want to be? Who do you want to be? I think it's a problem that defines both California schools in the Big Ten. I think USC to a lesser extent, and maybe Lincoln Riley has figured this out. But again, as both teams came in the last 2 years for USC, your Pac-12 school, all offense, no defense there, and you had to realize we can't be successful doing it this way. UCLA, people forget, lose Dante Moore early on the transfer portal 2 years ago, goes up to Oregon. Look at what Dante Moore is doing up there in Oregon. I know it's not super flashy, but the kid's completing 70% of his passes. Dan Lane's the quarterback whisperer with that stuff there. And I kind of think the minute Chip Kelly leaves there, the whole house of cards just collapses. And it's going to take them, I would easily say it's going to take them at minimum 5 years to fix that program. And that's if you get the right person in at this time at the end of this offseason.
Well, when you kind of look at here, if they don't get anybody in, if the Big Ten did bring them in for other sports, because they got all the Olympic sports, they're pretty good at track and field and swimming and whatnot and water polo. But baseball and softball need to be a focus for the Big Ten conference, because if they're going to be terrible at football, you got to give them a look in the eyes like, look, you're a name. You've got to be good at something to help us. And if it's baseball and softball, great. We'll prop you up and we'll survive football and basketball. Because last year you did go to the college, you did host a regional and you were good. But if that's the only sport, you better be dang good at it. At least pick us up in the spring, because in the fall and the winter, you're stunking it up pretty badly.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. Well, Brett Pry is gone from Virginia Tech. Neither one of us are surprised. You can't go down 28-0 to Old Dominion and expect to keep your job. It just doesn't happen. I don't ever think he was the right fit at Virginia Tech. We were always encouraging. We hoped for him that he would turn it around there at Vitech. They have a different problem in my eyes because they are in the ACC. They're not in the Big Ten, where the money isn't as plentiful. What they really need to do is they need to go back to what Frank Beamer did. And what Frank Beamer did is he recruited the Virginia Beach area. He recruited the Baltimore area, the Washington, D.C. area. He kept kids close to home that were really good athletes. And there are some amazing athletes in that little pocket there. You take a look at all the guys that have come from that area and then coach them up and know what it's like to be a Virginia Tech Hokie. I honestly would say if I'm Virginia Tech, I might be going with a pure defensive coach here. Like, I want it to be a hard, tough-nosed football team there. And I think that Virginia Tech is lacking that toughness than what they had when they were in their glory days.
There's just no flash on the team. Here's the thing. Like last year, they had a pretty good corner, and they had Tootin at running back, Michelle Tootin, who scored touchdowns today in the NFL, has blazing speed. They just they can't put it together. It's one step forward, two steps back every single time. And it's been like that for about 15 years. Who is there a pride? It just seems like everyone's living off of Enter Sandman. But then after that, it's just like, okay, well, what else are you bringing to us? Where's the lunch pail mentality of the defense in decades? That seems gone. And I understand. I totally agree with your defensive approach. Get a hard-nosed defensive coach, because you have a bunch of blue-collar hard workers in that area. Athletes are going to come in and play some defense. Dudes are going to hit you in the mouth. If you can set your standard as we're going to be defense and special teams. You don't have to win the game 30-0. If you just win the game 13-3, your defense and special teams are legit. You run the ball down their throat, you make a couple plays, and you're good. a culture change in getting back to the grassroots of who they are.
They need to model themselves after Tech, Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example. Find an alum who can come in and embrace it and be able to speak to that entire legacy. Now, Shane Beamer, the only way he's going back to Virginia Tech to be kind of coach to get fired at South Carolina. The job is so much better at South Carolina. The money's better. And he's actually, outside of what happened versus Vanderbilt, he has them playing relevant football pretty consistently. But only reason he goes to Virginia Tech is if he gets fired at South Carolina. He's not leaving them for the money or for the exposure. That's a step back.
Yeah, and you know that Lenore Sellers went into concussion protocol there too. Yeah. That makes it really tough. I mean,
that injury
really tough to win.
Really, I mean, when he went out in that ball game, it was kind of like, oh boy, here Doty's not a good quarterback. I think Carolina fans will say that he's he's been a backup receiver and he's backup quarterback. Like they don't have that number two. Even though I think Air Nolan's there, but is Air really the guy? Is he a freshman still learning? Nope. They need Lenore Sellers. But he's done a great job of recruiting and developing there in South Carolina. He's not going to leave unless he gets fired.
Yeah. I would like to see, it'll be a crazy one too. I know Michael Vick went into coaching this year. If they go like the crazy route,
you got nothing to lose.
He can recruit.
You got nothing to lose. And kids, actually, here's the thing with Deion and with him. Deion, the players' dads and moms knew who he was.
Yeah.
Vic, kids feel his highlights are still a lot more relevant and newer and more recent than Deion.
Right.
He has the impact of, I've seen him with the Falcons. I've seen him with the Eagles. The highlights of him Virginia Tech, taking them to the Sugar Bowl and playing for a national championship. That would resonate. He is, like, you have Bruce Smith and you got Mike Vick as the top two players in Virginia Tech football of all time.
Mm-hmm.
You can use that to sell. And that would be, obviously, it's his first year coaching at Norfolk State, but if he can get going,
right,
he might become the answer. And maybe that's the reason why they made the move now. Okay. Maybe we just make the splash higher because we have to recruit. Kids want to play with him. Brings up sponsors will come in there. NIL will be big, and you got to build off of that and carry forward. So I know we've been always focused on the Deion to Florida State thing. Maybe the Mike Vick to Virginia Tech thing actually has more legs and more odds of actually happening than anything else.
Yeah, if people would be able to just kind of like, again, the dog stuff is heinous, but again, the dude, I'll give him credit. He did the time for the crime, so
he paid his price.
So you kind of have to go, okay, you got forgiven that part. We kind of just move on. All right, we got to move on to the future there. Fresh, I'm intrigued by what's going to happen at Vitech, but not as much as I'm intrigued with week number 4. Week 4 is such a unique combination of games. I referred to it last weekend was we got like a smorgasbord of games. It's like a country buffet where there's maybe not the most healthiest options on, but maybe some really like tasty matchups.
You're going to get some, brown sugared up sweet potato pie with some collards, and then you're going to get biscuits and deep fried chicken and some gizzards. Everyone has different appeals, but they're all tasty to different groups of people, and it'll pass off. I mean, who would have thought Illinois and Indiana both undefeated under the lights, 7:30 on NBC.
First time ever ranked versus ranked matchup in Indiana, I believe, at night.
Yeah. It's going to be ridiculous, and I think we're going to have a fun game in that one.
Yeah, I'm so excited for next week, and we're going to be on location, so make sure you follow us on the social media. Make sure you follow us on Twitter because we will be doing some live stuff from location. We will actually be on campus at UCF for UCF UNC this upcoming weekend. So if you're not following us on Twitter, on social medias, make sure you jump on there, throw us a follow, engage with us there, and hit that subscribe button for us. Like this, leave us comments in the comment section. We appreciate each and every one of you that listens all weekend long. This podcast is part of Spinnable Sports, so make sure you're checking out SpinnableSports.com. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. And like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Leave us that 5-star review because you guys know, Fresh and I, we are those 2 5-star prospects. Fresh, that's all I got for week number 3. Let's close the book on that, and let's go to week 4.
3 was a blast. Week 4 is going to be more exciting. Keep moving through the college football season. Hit us up all over the place. Spinnable Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe, spread the word. SpinnableSports.com as well as following us on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Until that week 4 preview, we'll talk to y'all later. Bye, y'all.